I woke up gasping for air, my chest feeling like it was being crushed by an invisible weight. The pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Amelia and I had been married for 7 years. College sweethearts, with the perfect life. At least that's what everyone thought. When I collapsed during my presentation at work, I never imagined I'd end up fighting for my life in a hospital bed. What shocked me more than my diagnosis was my wife's reaction. I never thought the person who vowed to be by my side would leave me fighting for my life alone. Where are you watching from today? Hit subscribe and join me as I share how I almost died while my wife couldn't be bothered to care. The story of Amelia and me began 12 years ago in our sophomore year of college. I was a finance major with big dreams, pulling all-nighters in the library when I first saw her. Amelia was studying nursing, her textbooks spread across the table, determination in her eyes, as she memorized medical terms. She looked up and smiled, and that was it for me. I was captivated by her compassion and how she talked about wanting to help people at their most vulnerable. We dated through college, and I worked 2 jobs to help support her through nursing school. I believed in her dream and wanted to be part of making it happen. When she graduated, I proposed on the campus lawn where we first met. At our wedding, Amelia's vows echoed with promises to care for me in sickness and in health. I remember squeezing her hand, never thinking those words would be tested so dramatically. For the first few years, our marriage was everything I had hoped for. We moved to Chicago, where I landed a position as a financial analyst, and Amelia secured a job at Northwestern Memorial, one of the most prestigious hospitals in the city. We bought a condo downtown, took vacations to places we had pinned on our travel map, and talked about starting a family soon. But somewhere around year 5, things began to change. My work hours grew longer as I climbed the corporate ladder. The lifestyle Amelia had grown accustomed to, designer clothes, exclusive restaurants, luxury vacations, required my increased hours and dedication. I thought I was building our dream life together, but a distance was growing between us that I chose not to see. "Connor, you missed dinner again," became a common greeting when I arrived home late. Amelia's tone grew increasingly irritated, then indifferent. When I suggested date nights or weekend getaways to reconnect, she often had plans with her hospital friends that couldn't be changed. "You do your thing, I'll do mine," she would say with a shrug. "We don't have to do everything together." I noticed Amelia checking her phone constantly during our rare moments together, smiling at texts that were apparently not for me to know about. She started picking fights over small things, dishes left in the sink, a towel on the bathroom floor, as if searching for reasons to be angry. Looking back, I should have recognized these as warning signs. But I was raised to believe marriage takes work and commitment through the tough times. I thought it was just a phase we would weather together. The last truly happy memory I have of us was a weekend trip to Lake Michigan, 6 months before my hospitalization. For a brief moment, the Amelia I fell in love with returned. We walked along the shore, made love in our hotel room, and talked about the future without arguing. I clung to this memory in the following months, as things deteriorated, believing we could find our way back to that connection. That weekend gave me false hope. I didn't realize our marriage was already broken and Amelia had mentally checked out long ago. I was holding on to something that no longer existed, and it would take a near-death experience for me to finally see the truth. My colleagues at work noticed the changes in me before I did. "You look exhausted, Connor," my friend Jake would say. I brushed off concerns, attributing my fatigue to big projects and deadline pressure. In reality, the emotional toll of my failing marriage was affecting my physical health more than I realized. Little did I know, these were the last normal days of my life, before everything would change forever. The foundation was cracking beneath my feet, and I was about to fall through. The day everything changed started like any other. I had been feeling under the weather for about 2 weeks. Persistent cough, fatigue, occasional fever, but deadlines at work kept me pushing through. Taking sick days wasn't an option with the Johnson account presentation looming. Amelia had barely acknowledged my illness, just tossing cold medicine my way and suggesting I stop being dramatic when I mentioned how awful I felt. That morning I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror, hardly recognizing the pale, sweaty face staring back at me. My hands trembled as I knotted my tie. "You really look terrible," Amelia commented flatly as she applied her makeup. "Try not to get your germs on me. I have a long shift today. I think I might need to see a doctor." I admitted something I rarely did. She rolled her eyes. "Everyone has that bug going around. Take some Tylenol and power through." Against my better judgment, I went to work. The conference room was packed with executives from across the country for my presentation. Halfway through my carefully prepared slides, the room began to spin. My words slurred, and the last thing I remember was the horrified expression on my boss's face as I collapsed, knocking over a water pitcher on my way down. I woke up in the emergency room disoriented and alone. The beeping monitors and sterile smell instantly triggered panic. A nurse explained that I had been brought in by ambulance after collapsing at work. My first instinct was to call Amelia. 1 call, 2 calls, 3. Finally, she answered. "What is it, Connor?" "I'm at happy hour with the girls. I'm in the ER." I managed to say, my voice barely audible. I collapsed during the presentation. Her sigh was audible. "Are you serious right now? Can't you handle this yourself?" "The doctor wants to speak with my family. They think it might be serious." "Fine. Which hospital?" she asked, not bothering to hide her annoyance. It took Amelia 3 hours to arrive, during which time blood tests revealed a raging infection in my system. When she finally walked in, she was dressed for a night out, not to support her critically ill husband. She barely made eye contact as the doctor explained that I had developed sepsis, a life-threatening condition, requiring immediate hospitalization. "How long will he need to stay?" was her first question. "At least several days, possibly longer, depending on how he responds to treatment," the doctor replied. "This is quite serious. His condition could deteriorate rapidly without proper care." Amelia glanced at her watch. "I have an early shift tomorrow. Will you be okay if I come back in the morning?" I was too weak to argue as she left with a quick, impersonal pat on my arm. The nurse gave me a sympathetic look after Amelia departed, which only made me feel worse. The next few days became a blur of antibiotics, fevers, and increasing pain. Amelia visited sporadically, usually for less than 30 minutes, spending most of that time on her phone. One afternoon, drifting in and out of consciousness, I overheard her in the hallway. "Yeah, it's so annoying," she was saying to someone on the phone. "I have to keep coming to the hospital instead of meeting you guys." "No. Nothing immediately life-threatening, just an infection that he's being dramatic about." Each word cut deeper than the infection ravaging my body. A kind night nurse named Jessica became my primary source of compassion. She would sit with me during her breaks, adjusting my pillows, and assuring me that I was improving even when it didn't feel that way. On the 4th night, my fever spiked dangerously high. I was shaking uncontrollably, my hospital gown soaked with sweat. Jessica called the doctor while I desperately tried reaching Amelia. When she finally answered, I could barely speak through my chattering teeth. "Amelia, please, I need you. The fever is worse, and they're talking about moving me to ICU." Her response froze my heart more effectively than any fever chill. "Look, Connor, I'm not your babysitter. Handle it yourself. The hospital has plenty of staff. I have plans tonight that I can't break." The phone went dead. I stared at it in disbelief as tears mixed with the sweat on my face. That was the moment I realized I was truly alone in my fight to survive. By morning, my condition had deteriorated to critical. The infection had spread, causing complications with my kidneys and respiratory system. Dr. Patel, the infectious disease specialist, stood grimly at my bedside reviewing my chart. "Mr. Hayes, we need to perform an emergency procedure to drain the infection that's accumulated in your chest cavity," he explained. "It's become urgent. Is there someone we should call to be here with you?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. My throat tightened with embarrassment. "My wife? She's working." I lied, unable to admit the truth to this man trying to save my life. "I understand," he said, though his expression suggested he understood more than I was saying. "We'll take good care of you. The procedure is scheduled for 3 hours from now." Once alone, I made a final attempt to reach Amelia. Call after call went to voicemail. With shaking hands, I typed a text. "Emergency surgery in 3 hours. Doctor says it's serious. Please come." No response. With a nurse's help, I managed to write a brief note with my important information and wishes, just in case things went wrong. It felt surreal, penning what might be my last words while my wife was unreachable by choice. When they wheeled me toward surgery, I scanned the hallways, hoping to see Amelia rushing toward me with apologies and concern. The corridors remained filled with only strangers. The anesthesia was a mercy, pulling me away from the emotional pain that had begun to overshadow even the physical agony. My last conscious thought was wondering if Amelia would regret her absence if I didn't wake up. Hours later, I emerged from anesthesia, to find Amelia sitting beside my bed scrolling through her phone. The momentary relief at seeing her was quickly replaced by confusion. "You came," I whispered through my oxygen mask. She glanced up briefly. "The doctor called me directly. Made it sound like you might not make it." There was no warmth in her voice. No evidence of tears or worry. "The parking here is ridiculous, by the way. $25 just to visit my own husband. Sorry. To inconvenience you. I managed the drugs, making it difficult to hide my hurt. I had to cancel dinner with the hospital crew. Everyone was looking forward to it." She sighed dramatically, setting her phone on the side table. "How long until they release you? I need to adjust my schedule." As she spoke, her phone screen lit up with an incoming message. I wouldn't have noticed, except for the name that flashed across the top, Dylan, accompanied by a heart emoji. Through my post, surgical haze pieces began clicking into place. The late nights, the protective behavior with her phone, the increasing disinterest in our marriage. When Amelia stepped out to get coffee, her phone chimed again. Without fully considering my actions, I reached for it. The message preview on the lock screen made my blood run cold. "Hope the husband drama ends soon. Miss you in my bed. Last night was amazing." And then another. "Is he still milking this for attention? You're a nurse, can't you just tell if he's faking it?" My hand trembled as I set the phone down exactly as I found it. When Amelia returned, something in my expression must have given me away. "What's wrong?" "You look worse," she said, checking the monitors. "Who's Dylan?" The words escaped before I could stop them. Her face transformed instantly defensive anger, replacing the bored indifference. "You went through my phone. While you're lying there, acting like you're dying, you're spying on me." "Acting? I just had emergency surgery," I said, my voice breaking. "And I didn't go through anything." His messages just appeared. "This is exactly why Dylan understands me better than you ever did," she snapped. "You're always the victim, always needing attention. What did you expect? You're always working. Dylan actually pays attention to me." The monitors began beeping as my heart rate spiked dangerously. Amelia looked at them with professional detachment rather than wifely concern. "Stop being so dramatic about everything, Connor. People get sick and recover all the time. People also grow apart. It happens." "I nearly died," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "And I'm still here, aren't I? But I can't do this right now. I need some air." She grabbed her purse and phone. "Call the nurse if you need something." That's literally their job, not mine. After she left, the full weight of her betrayal crashed over me. The physical pain of my condition paled compared to the realization that my wife not only didn't love me anymore, but actually resented being pulled away from her affair to deal with my illness. The monitors began alarming as my blood pressure dropped and my oxygen levels decreased with my distress. A medical team rushed in, working quickly to stabilize me. Among them was an older nurse named Barbara, who stayed after the others left. She gently wiped the tears from my face with a cool cloth. "I couldn't help overhearing some of that," she said softly. "I've been a nurse for 30 years, and I want you to know that what just happened isn't normal or okay. You deserve better than this, honey." Her simple kindness broke something open inside me. I sobbed until exhaustion pulled me into a merciful sleep. That night marked the lowest point of both my physical and emotional life, lying broken in every possible way in a hospital bed, betrayed by the person who was supposed to love me most. But sometimes you need to hit bottom before you can begin to rise. The morning after discovering Amelia's affair, I woke with a strange sense of clarity, despite my physical weakness. The pain medication had worn off, and both my surgical wound and heart were throbbing, but my mind felt unusually sharp. I lay in the quiet hospital room, watching sunlight gradually fill the space, thinking about my parents. They had died in a car accident during my senior year of college, but their marriage had been a template of mutual respect and genuine care. My father had once spent 3 weeks sleeping in a hospital chair when my mother needed back surgery, refusing to leave her side. That was love. What I had with Amelia was something else entirely. When the nurse came in to check my vitals, I made a decision. "Could you please update my emergency contact information? I'd like to remove my wife and add my friend Jake Mendoza instead." The nurse, seeing my swollen eyes and knowing what had transpired the night before, squeezed my hand gently. "Of course. We can take care of that right away." I stopped calling Amelia. When she texted asking if I was still mad about yesterday, I simply didn't respond. Instead, I poured all my energy into healing. I followed every instruction from the medical team, forced myself to eat despite having no appetite, and began the painful process of getting out of bed and walking the hospital corridors. During physical therapy sessions in the hospital's rehabilitation room, I met Michael, a middle-aged man recovering from a stroke. Unlike me, Michael had a devoted wife who brought homemade food and fresh clothes daily. Yet he understood my situation with surprising depth. Before Janet, I was married to a woman who left me when I lost my job, he shared during one of our sessions. Best thing that ever happened to me, though I couldn't see it then. Sometimes people leave your life to make room for what you actually deserve. His words resonated deeply. Each day, as my physical strength improved incrementally, I felt my emotional resolve strengthening too. I began making connections with the hospital staff who had shown me more compassion than my own wife. Barbara brought me books from the hospital library. Jessica, my night nurse, snuck in decent coffee instead of the hospital sludge. Dr. Patel took extra time during rounds to explain every aspect of my treatment and recovery. After a week of silence, I finally called Jake. He had sent several concerned messages after hearing about my collapse at work. When I explained the situation, including Amelia's affair and abandonment during my crisis, his reaction was immediate. "I'm coming to visit right now, and you're staying with me when they discharge you." No arguments. True to his word, Jake arrived an hour later with a duffel bag of toiletries, comfortable clothes, and my laptop from the office. The relief of seeing a friendly face almost undid my newfound composure. "You look like hell," he said, bluntly, pulling up a chair. "Feel like it too," I admitted. "But apparently I'm improving enough that they're talking about discharge in a few days." And Amelia radio silence, since I stopped responding to her texts. "She's called the nurses' station a couple times for updates, but hasn't bothered to visit." Jake's expression darkened. "You know this isn't your fault, right? Being sick isn't a character flaw. Her behavior is inexcusable." His straightforward loyalty was the support I had desperately needed. We spent the afternoon making practical plans for my recovery at his place. For the first time since my hospitalization, I felt a glimmer of hope about the future. The day before my scheduled discharge, I sent Amelia a simple text. "Being discharged tomorrow at 11 a.m. We'll be staying at Jake's for recovery." Her response was predictable. "Can't pick you up. Busy at work. Get an Uber." The next morning, Jake arrived early to help gather my belongings and handle the discharge paperwork. We were just about to leave when Amelia suddenly appeared in the doorway, dressed in her nursing scrubs, as if she'd rushed over during her shift. Her expression was a carefully constructed mask of wifely concern. "Oh good, I made it before you left," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "How are you feeling, honey?" The endearment felt like an insult after everything that had transpired. Jake stiffened beside me, but I placed a calming hand on his arm. "I know about Dylan," I said quietly, meeting her gaze directly. "I'll be staying with Jake until I'm stronger. We can talk about next steps when I'm recovered." Her performance crumbled, instantly concern transforming into defensive anger. "You're still on that. It was just a few texts, Connor. You're overreacting as usual." "Not now, Amelia," I said, surprising myself with my steadiness. "I nearly died while you were with him. I'm not having this conversation here." She glanced around, suddenly aware of the nurses within earshot, some of whom had witnessed her absence and my suffering. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment rather than shame. "Fine. Call me when you're done being dramatic." She turned on her heel and stalked away. Jake helped me into the wheelchair for hospital policy, though I could walk short distances by then. As we left the building where I had nearly died, and definitely been reborn, in some essential way the fresh air felt symbolic of the new beginning ahead of me. That first night at Jake's apartment was challenging physically, but liberating emotionally. Despite the pain and weakness, I felt lighter than I had in years. The crushing weight of trying to save a marriage alone had been lifted. Whatever lay ahead would be difficult, but for the first time I was prioritizing my own well-being above everything else. As I drifted off to sleep in Jake's comfortable guest room, I realized that sometimes the worst experiences show us exactly what we need to see. My illness had nearly killed me, but it had also revealed the truth that might ultimately save my life in a different way. The hard work of healing, both my body and my heart, was just beginning. But at least now I was on the right path. No more denial. No more accepting scraps of attention and calling it love. It was time to rebuild my life on a foundation of self-respect that had been missing for far too long. The weeks following my hospital discharge became a period of profound transformation. My body slowly healed from the ravages of sepsis, but the emotional recovery proved equally significant. Jake's spare bedroom became my sanctuary, a place where I could rebuild my strength without the constant undercurrent of rejection that had characterized my marriage. 2 weeks after moving in with Jake, I connected with a therapist, Dr. Sarah Goldman, who specialized in trauma and relationship issues. In our first session, I broke down describing the moment Amelia had told me to handle it when I thought I might be dying. "What you experienced was abandonment during a life-threatening crisis," Dr. Sarah explained gently. "That's a significant trauma on top of the physical trauma your body endured. Give yourself permission to grieve both your health crisis and the loss of the relationship you thought you had." Those words unlocked something in me. I hadn't allowed myself to fully process the dual betrayals of my body and my wife. With Dr. Sarah's guidance, I began working through the complex emotions: anger, grief, humiliation, and fear. When I felt strong enough, I returned to our apartment while Amelia was working to collect more of my belongings. Walking through the space we had shared felt surreal, like visiting a museum of a past life. On the refrigerator, our wedding photo still hung, both of us beaming with hope and promise. I took it down, unable to reconcile those smiling faces with our current reality. While gathering my clothes, I found a hotel receipt in the pocket of Amelia's jacket hanging in our closet. The date coincided with a weekend she had claimed to be working a double shift. More evidence of her deception, as if I needed it. I photographed the receipt and added it to the growing file my lawyer had suggested I maintain. Yes, I had contacted a lawyer. 3 weeks after my discharge, still recovering physically but growing stronger mentally, each day I met with Diana Fitzgerald, a divorce attorney recommended by a colleague. She listened to my story without judgment, then laid out my options clearly. Given the circumstances, including the abandonment during a medical crisis and the infidelity, we have a strong case for a favorable settlement, she advised. But I want you to be prepared. Divorce is rarely clean or easy, even when the reasons seem clear-cut. I nodded, feeling a strange calm. I understand, but staying would be harder. Amelia requested a meeting about a month after my hospitalization. We met at a neutral coffee shop, her suggestion. I arrived early, choosing a table in the corner that offered privacy, but was still in public view. When she walked in, I was struck by how little I felt seeing her. The woman I had loved so desperately now seemed like a stranger. "You look better," she offered as she sat down, eyeing me critically. "I am better," I replied simply. "So, when are you coming home? This little tantrum has gone on long enough, don't you think?" Her tone was dismissive, as though my near death and her betrayal were minor inconveniences. "I'm not coming home, Amelia. I've filed for divorce." Her face cycled through shock, anger, and calculation. So quickly, it was almost comical. "Because of a few text messages, you'd throw away 7 years over nothing." "It wasn't nothing to me. I almost died, and you couldn't be bothered to care. That tells me everything I need to know about our marriage. You're being ridiculous. Everyone faces health challenges. I was there, wasn't I? No, Amelia, you weren't. Not when it mattered." I kept my voice steady. "The papers will be delivered to you this week. I hope we can keep this civilized." She leaned forward, switching tactics. "Connor, I made a mistake. I was stressed and overwhelmed. We can work through this." "Nearly dying showed me life is too short to spend with someone who doesn't care," I said, standing to leave. "I wish you well, but this marriage is over." As I walked away, her final words followed me. "You'll regret this when you're sick again, and all alone." But I wasn't alone anymore. In the months since my illness, I had reconnected with friends Amelia had subtly isolated me from. My colleagues had shown unexpected support, with my boss insisting I take all the time I needed for recovery. I was building a community of people who genuinely cared about my well-being. I returned to work part-time after 6 weeks, gradually rebuilding my strength and professional confidence. The Johnson presentation that had been interrupted by my collapse was rescheduled, and this time I delivered it flawlessly, earning praise from the executive team. Small victories that meant everything in my journey back to myself. My new apartment became a physical manifestation of my healing process. Unlike our sleek showpiece condo that Amelia had insisted on, my new place was comfortable and unpretentious. I adopted a rescue dog, a gentle older retriever named Cooper, who seemed as grateful for his second chance as I was for mine. Our evening walks became a cornerstone of my recovery both physically and mentally. The divorce proceedings were predictably difficult. Amelia contested everything initially more out of spite than actual disagreement with the terms. When her tactics failed to provoke me, she switched to tearful pleas about saving our marriage. But I had seen her true character in my moment of greatest vulnerability, and there was no going back. 4 months after my hospitalization, I was having dinner with Jake at a new restaurant when Amelia walked in with Dylan. They didn't notice us immediately, giving me a moment to observe them together. She was laughing at something he said, her hand possessively on his arm. The sight caused a dull ache, rather than the searing pain I might have expected earlier. When she finally spotted me, her expression froze. She whispered something to Dylan, who turned to stare in my direction. I simply nodded acknowledgement and returned to my conversation with Jake, refusing to let her presence disrupt my evening. Later, as we left, I passed their table without stopping. That small act of indifference marked another milestone in my recovery. The final divorce meeting came 6 months after my illness. Amelia arrived looking subdued, the fight gone from her stance. As we signed the final papers, she spoke softly enough that only I could hear. "I do regret how I handled everything. I was a terrible wife when you needed me most." I looked at her, seeing not the monster of my hospital nightmares nor the love of my younger days, but simply a flawed human who had made harmful choices. "I don't wish you ill, Amelia," I replied honestly. "But I wish you'd been there when I was." With those words and a final signature, our marriage officially ended. As I left the lawyer's office, I felt neither triumph nor despair, but a quiet certainty that I had done what was necessary for my own healing and future happiness. The physical effects of sepsis lingered longer than expected. I still tired easily and had occasional pain from the surgical site. But these reminders of my brush with death had become strange gifts, daily prompts to appreciate my second chance and never again settle for less than genuine care and respect in my relationships. 6 months after my hospital stay, my life had completely transformed. I accepted a new job opportunity that offered better work-life balance, allowing me time to pursue interests I had neglected during my marriage. My friendship with Michael from the hospital continued, and we became regular hiking buddies as both our physical conditions improved. Most unexpectedly, I reconnected with Natalie, an old college friend who reached out after hearing about my illness from mutual acquaintances. Our coffee catch-up turned into dinner, which evolved into regular dates. The contrast between how she responded to even minor health concerns and how Amelia had behaved during my life-threatening crisis was stark and healing. When I developed a severe migraine during one of our dates, Natalie drove me home, darkened the room, brought ice packs, and checked on me throughout the evening with gentle texts that didn't demand responses. Such simple acts of care that should be normal in relationships, but had been notably absent in my marriage. I came to understand that what happened with Amelia wasn't a reflection of my worth but of her character. Real love isn't conditional on convenience or perfect health. It shows up most powerfully precisely when things are at their worst. In a strange way, I became grateful for the illness that nearly took my life. Without that crisis, I might have continued for years in a marriage devoid of genuine care, making compromises that diminished my spirit until there was nothing left. The healthcare workers who showed me more compassion than my own wife became unexpected heroes in my story. I sent a heartfelt letter to Nurse Barbara, who had held my hand during my darkest moment. She replied with a card, saying my recovery, both physical and emotional, was the best thanks she could receive. As the 1-year anniversary of my hospitalization approached, I found myself reflecting on the profound journey from near death to new life. The lessons had been harsh but invaluable sometimes. Losing what you thought you wanted opens the door to what you truly need. Self-worth must be the foundation of any relationship. And perhaps most importantly, life is too precious and fragile to spend with people who make you feel alone, even when you're together. Have you ever experienced someone letting you down when you needed them most? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below. Remember to like this video if it resonated with you, and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and personal growth. Thank you for joining me today. And remember that sometimes our deepest wounds become the openings through which the light finally enters.